Well, guys, we have done it. We are halfway through my big, lofty challenge that I had this year of doing 100 9x12s. And kind of right on time, I guess, because we're basically halfway through the year. I may be a little bit behind, but I did take a lot of time to make some big paintings, so I think I'll be able to catch up pretty quickly. But with that, I wanted to take the time to kind of look back on the 50 that I've done so far, some of my favorites, least favorites, and of course some of the things that I've learned along the way and any tips that I feel like I'm able to offer you. So let's hop right in. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, I made the decision that I wanted to do 100 9x12s because it was a perfect size that I could get done in one day. Let's talk about some of my favorite things. I think it goes without saying that one of the biggest things that I've gotten from this challenge so far is just the power and daily practice and showing up no matter what it is you're doing. Daily practice goes such a long way. So being able to look back on the 50 so far and just seeing how many highs and lows I've had, the ebbs and flows, and like where I started just at the beginning of the year, and the confidence and the brushwork and all of these things that, you know, I was able to see at the beginning of the year, and then 50 paintings later, see where it's at now is pretty awesome. And that came from just showing up daily with intent and the desire to learn and improve. So with that, I guess one of the things that is maybe a bit of a backwards piece of advice is I do think that there's a power in quantity over quality. Hear me out, because I know that might sound weird. We all want to create masterpieces. We all want every piece to be a masterpiece. But I think to some extent there is something to that repetition, the start to finish repetition, and doing it so frequently and revisiting that so much that you really, you just learn so much. For example, instead of doing 4 big pieces a year where you only get 4 chances to start a painting, be at the ugly phase of your painting, be in the middle of your painting, and then be at the end of your painting, instead of doing that 4 times on a big scale, I've now done that 50 times on a small scale. And with the small scale, it also feels less, I have less of an attachment to everything, in the sense where if a big painting goes wrong, you're like, I've invested a lot of time, I've invested a lot of money, and it's not going well. So you kind of like have this hard feeling of like, well, I need to finish it, I need to fix it, I need to do these things, or you're just like afraid to do it. You just run into a whole bunch of problems. Whereas when it's a small painting, if one didn't work out, I was like, okay, that wasn't great, let's learn from it, but move on. So instead of going back and just being like, okay, how do I fix this and make it perfect, I was like, you know what? The goal is to do 1 a day and finish them in 1 day. And I need to just leave this as is, understand that it's not my best painting, but again, take what I learned from it on to the next ones. And so it's not just like mindlessly like, oh, I didn't like this, so let's just throw it out and not think about it. I thought about it, I analyzed it, and I really tried to learn what went right and wrong and when it went wrong, and tried to apply that just to future paintings. And same goes for ones that went really well, you know, on the ones that went really easy, even though it's kind of harder to analyze the easy ones just by human nature. I think it's just harder to analyze the wins. But even with some of the wins, just making sure I was like, oh, why did that work? What about today worked? What about the way that I put color down worked? Anyways, it sounds a little bit backwards, but quantity over quality. I still think if I was to put a little like asterisk to that, I think the trick is to show up thinking that every piece is going to be your masterpiece and like putting your best foot forward every single time. But my point is that at the end of the day, if it's not, don't beat yourself up for it. Just move on, keep going. And that repetition will get you through so many more problems than if you just sit and ruminate on one big piece for a long time. So the other thing that I've loved about this journey so far is just that I've gotten a lot of practice. Yes, I'm sure that sounds incredibly obvious, but what do I mean by that? Well, I've gotten to practice a lot of things. Styles, subject matters, and I've been able to learn very quickly just different aspects to painting in the sense of, there were ones where I was like, oh, I really want this to go well, so I'm gonna play it safe and do it in my style and like make sure that I execute it really well because I want it to be more of a portfolio piece. And then there were other ones where I was like, I don't really care how this goes. I want to practice the loosest brushwork that I possibly can. And I did. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it didn't. But I got to practice, and it gave me the freedom to practice things like that. So I got to experiment with different styles of brushwork. I got to practice with different color tones and experimentation. I'm still working on that, actually. Playing with color as much as I can. I got to practice with different values and different colors in these values. And I got to practice working off of many different photos and learn, what photos will translate well to a painting, which ones don't really translate well to paintings. I got to practice how to look at a reference photo, take it and potentially make it better or different and play with it a bit more and combine ones. Like this massive amount of repetition allowed me to experiment with so many things and put it to practice and just kind of get a feel for what works, what doesn't, what maybe I don't have a grasp on yet. And that was really cool. So in that sense, I had some of my want to be perfect pieces, but it also opened the door for a lot of experimentation because I wasn't investing that much time or money into each one. And so I felt like I was allowed to show up, try these different things, and potentially have it not go well and then have it be fine. So kind of in relation to that last point, it also helped me get more in tune with my style. So what is it that I actually like? What is it that I like to add to pieces? What kind of brushwork do I like to put down? Again, the power in just being able to go from start to finish 50 times already has really allowed me to analyze my own style and what I really feel like works and doesn't work, and ways that allow me to add more of myself into each painting, thereby creating a more cohesive body of work. Even if it's different subject matters, I can still kind of start to unify things based off of the likes and dislikes that I've found within myself. And I've just really been able to hone in on my style and different things that I like, and kind of the way that I like to express my own voice in paintings. Okay, I feel like this one also probably goes without saying, but this whole journey so far has really increased my efficiency and confidence, for that matter, which kind of go hand in hand. I just feel like I paint way faster, way more confidently. I've almost kind of developed a system and a structure to my paintings that is just very intuitive, and it allows me to just work way faster. And again, because of that, when I moved to bigger paintings that I had to get done this year, I got through them way faster than I ever have before, and at a level that I hadn't seen yet before in my own work. And I 100% attribute that to what I have been learning and practicing on these small pieces. And then when I went large, the efficiency showed, the brushwork, the confidence, all of that just came through. And that was that was really cool. So I'm glad that I've done some big pieces along the way to kind of put everything to the test and see how it works. And it worked great. I think these are some of the best large paintings I have created yet. So that is a big testament to just what this process has taught me so far. So if I have any tips for you in regards to a challenge like this for yourself, the biggest tips are going to be very similar to the things that I've learned from this journey so far. And that is, one, I would show up with the intention of every piece being a masterpiece, but also being okay with creating bad art. It's one day, it's one piece of paper, just move on and keep going. If it sucks, the world doesn't have to see it. There are definitely a few that I have not put online. And I just released a video about one of the failed attempts. So it was worse than that one, if you can believe it. But yeah, there's been a few that I was just like, I don't even want this on the internet. So it is tucked away in my portfolio for me to laugh at later in life. But I do think that there is something to like showing up, wanting to put your best foot forward. But if it doesn't go that way, that's fine. Just move on. Don't spend that much time dwelling on it. And with that, I would also use the opportunity to experiment. So while you're showing up and wanting to put your best foot forward, also take a bit of the pressure off sometimes and just be like, I want to have looser brushwork. So what happens if I get the biggest brush that I am uncomfortable with using and I try to paint this with just that? And make yourself uncomfortable. Go out of your comfort zone with these things. Try a limited color palette. Try adding in a few colors that you've never used before. Like, that is your opportunity to try these things. And again, if it goes wrong, who cares? Just move on and, try again or go back to what you liked doing beforehand. But there were definitely a few that I showed up and I was like, no, I'm limited to this brush only. And it was bigger and chunkier. And what do I know? It is actually one of my favorite paintings that I've created so far. So you never know what's going to come of it. It could be your favorite painting, just on the other end of your comfort zone. In fact, I think there's a lot of psychological studies that say that greatness is oftentimes on the other end of your comfort zone. So, that's something just to think about. My tips that if you try to tackle something like this, just make sure you're coming in best foot forward, but you're also pushing yourself and using this opportunity to just try and fail as many times as you can. So with all that said, what is coming up? Well, we've got 50 more. Some of the first 50, I definitely wanted to use them to build up my portfolio on my website. And there's a certain commission style that I want to be requested for, so I wanted to do enough of those to demonstrate that I could. And now that a lot of those are out of the way and done well, and I'm really happy with them. But with this next 50, I'm still going to be doing plenty of horse and equestrian styled artwork, but I'm also going to branch out and use this next 50 to practice a lot of things and hone in on skills. So again, one of the things it's always my nemesis and demise is humans. They're so hard to paint. Definitely a weakness of mine. So I really want to focus on some portraiture and just making sure that I am pushing myself to paint people often so that I can just get as comfortable with them as I am with painting a horse. And, it's only going to make me a better artist and better at understanding how to put paint down. So that's one thing. The other thing also is just to work on looser brushwork. As always, it's kind of a perpetual thing to work on, but working with bigger brushes, how do I get maximum impact with the least amount of brush work put down, least amount of fussing, least amount of blending. I really want to preserve those initial lively strokes, making sure that I'm keeping that in there. And some of that might be, instead of doing one a day, letting it dry overnight and kind of putting these highlights on and like playing with that and seeing how I can now push these further. I've kind of gotten very comfortable with the alla prima style, but I kind of am curious to see what happens if I get one more day to work on it. How can I push it further? And then again, that'll just translate to my bigger ones, where when I get to the end point and I have that little voice in my head that's like, I could push this further, or am I going to ruin it by pushing it forward, or am I going to enhance it by pushing it forward, or like doing a little bit more work on it? And I'm hoping to answer that within the next 50 paintings, that, you know, I kind of work that out on a small scale so that when I go to a large scale, I have a better understanding of when to push it and when to leave it. Always the other thing, just color, making sure I'm adding more vibration into my colors and just playing with color all around. But I am getting better with that. So I think maybe a better way to phrase that is adding more of my own voice into colors. So instead of just taking a photo outright, trying to add almost imaginary colors, but like colors that make sense, but just different. I want to try adding my own color voice into like these values. So yeah, and I guess kind of on the same note, just subject matter in general, I want to try practicing some other things that I think can push me out of my comfort zone all around. And I think the last little asterisk that I'm gonna add to this challenge is I have some 12x16s that are right there on my floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And I think I'm gonna add those in, like I'm gonna count those towards this challenge. So whereas previously it was only these 9x12s, because they're gonna help me understand, again, working on it in multiple days and multiple sittings instead of all wet on wet. I'm just gonna kind of use them to see what happens if I push things further, but they're small enough and they're close enough to the 9x12 that it's kind of a challenge in its own way, just having it be a little bit larger. That's what I have to look forward to in the next 50. So with that, I think I'm gonna save my favorites and least favorites for the 100 video when the challenge is all complete. We'll kind of look back over all of them, but I hope you have enjoyed this little peek at the 50 that I've completed so far. Let me know in the comments if you had a favorite and one that kind of stood out to you. If you are interested in any of the artwork that you saw in this video, any of the horse ones can usually be found on my website. That one's kept more equestrian specific, but on my Etsy is where I put all of my non-equestrian artwork that, you know, doesn't really belong on a curated website. My Etsy is where all the other ones go, so make sure to check that out. Everything is in the link below. And as always, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.